A new microphone. Breaker, breaker, 1-9. Breaker, break. It's a Red Robin. We're bobbing along. We'll see you on the flip side, good buddy. 10-4. I like this. All right. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics, Standard of Practice 1-7. Sounds really exciting. I'll do my best. Some of you, for many years, especially if you are a member of GRAR, have practiced verifying that your offer has been, that an agent's offer has been presented if you're a listing agent. Back in November, the National Association of Realtors actually made it official that if you are requested, if it is requested of you as a listing agent by a buyer's agent to provide proof or verification that that buyer's agent's offer was presented, you are required to do so now, according to the Code of Ethics. And the language, see if I can pull the language out here. It says, the board amended the policy which relates to the cooperating brokers in the presentation of offers. It reinforces cooperation and brings NAR policy in line with the Code of Ethics. Under the rule, listing brokers will be required to provide written affirmation or notification to cooperating brokers on the disposition of their offer. The requirement gives the associations the ability to impose disciplinary actions against a listing broker who fails to present either written confirmation that the offer was presented or evidence that the seller waived that obligation to have the offer presented. Now, I want to separate GRAR out from the other boards because GRAR has established a policy, actually did so back in 2012, that it goes like this. Upon request by the cooperating broker, the listing broker or listing agent shall provide the cooperating broker with the affidavit of presentation of offer. There's actually a specific form that agents on GRAR are required, listing agents on GRAR are required to provide to a broker, a buyer broker, and that affidavit looks like this. Now, as you can imagine, I'm going to read this to you. It says, Grand Rapids Association of Realtors Affidavit of Presentation of Offer. The undersigned hereby attest that the offer received from your buyer, or the buyer's agent's buyer, to purchase a property at the address, 123 Main Street, whatever it is, was presented to the sellers for consideration on a date and time. And then you print your name, sign your name, and then the realtor is supposed to sign it too. In this case, let's say Greg or Kim. So, wow, imagine that. Let's pretend you get 37 offers on a property. Seller accepts one, and you have to provide 36 of these if every agent asked for proof. Now, hopefully they're not going to ask, everybody's not going to ask for proof. Hopefully it's only going to be one or two, or maybe three, who ask for proof. In the event you are a GRAR member, you are bound by this. Now, here's the tricky part. GRAR, in their form, does not include the possibility that your seller has waived that obligation. That the seller put in writing that my agent, my listing agent, Charlie Brown, is not required to present all offers to me. Well, that's kind of interesting. And that's a conversation that I'll be having with Pam and and Julie at the board at GRAR, because I think that requiring this is, first of all, pretty unrealistic, and secondly, that if the other option is for the seller to waive that obligation in writing, then the GRAR form doesn't address that issue. It actually is only half of the options that the NAR Code of Ethics Standard of Practice 1.7, which went into effect in January, it's only half of the options that we have as listing agents. So I have an issue with this affidavit. Nevertheless, if your board doesn't have a form like this, if they have not adopted an affidavit and said, if you are challenged, listing agent, if you are challenged by a buyer's agent whether or not their offer was presented, then you have to provide this form or some other form which says that you did in fact present their offer, or box B, that your seller has waived the obligation and you have your seller's signature on it. We're all going to have to check with our boards to make sure that we are in compliance with the standard of practice. Now, here's the interesting thing. If we follow the letter of the standard of practice 1.7, which was, again, adopted and went into effect in January, technically a email would suffice. It's not requiring that the seller sign that affidavit. The standard of practice itself by the National Association of Realtors, as it's adopted, does not require that your seller sign anything, except in the event they have waived their obligation, your obligation as listing agent, to present all offers to them. That's the only thing that they are asking for a signature on. So, in most cases, other than GRAR, then you would have the right to send them an email. And that email language could be very simple. And I had it here in just a minute. If you give me just a second, I'll see if I can find it. You know what? I'll post it later. I had it up on my computer. I had it copied and ready to share, but I can't find it right now. Anyway, the email, in my view, can be very simple. And it would be, this email confirms that your offer was presented on 123 Main Street at, February 8th at 2019 at 7 p.m. Or the seller has waived the obligation for me to present all offers, and then attach a document signed by your sellers, which in fact waives that obligation. This is kind of a game changer. And I know that in the past, we have seen some agents have made it a practice. Oh, I got two. Oh, I'm on that one now. Okay, thanks. Because I'm looking over here. Okay, some agents have made it a practice to write things like rejected across the offer and then have their sellers initial it or sign it. Well, that doesn't fit the compliance necessary for GRAR, does it? GRAR says you got to provide in this affidavit. But if you're on a board that doesn't require that affidavit, then this might work just fine. Some say use the word up in the corner, reviewed or presented. Well, let's talk about that. What does reviewed mean? Does it mean that I reviewed it as a listing agent, or does it mean that it was presented to the seller? I think that I would opt to put presented up in the corner and then have the listing agent could sign that, because again, you can't force your seller to sign anything, and the standard of practice does not require that your seller sign anything. In fact, there's no mention of your seller in the Code of Ethics Standard of Practice 1.7. So, this is going to be, as I said, a bit of a game changer in that when you are asked for confirmation that the offer has been, that a buyer's agent's offer has been presented, you now have the obligation to follow through and say, in writing, in some form of writing, to say, yes, in fact, it was presented, or my seller has waived the obligation to present all offers, and here's the document that says that they have waived it and with their signature on it. So it's pretty confusing stuff, but that's what we're faced with is this change in our business. We're constantly getting change. So if you have questions on that, please post it so we can address them. We got 15 more minutes here, 15 more minutes, something like that. And I want to move away from that, but only a step, because escalation clauses, this issue really starts to play into it when you start dealing with escalation clauses. We had this situation come up a couple of times on Friday where buyer's agents called me and said the listing agent is refusing to accept escalation clauses. And I said, really? On what basis is that listing agent authorized to refuse escalation clauses? And neither of them could give me an answer. And so I reached out to Gail Anderson because I wanted to answer from our legal authority. And I will read you what Gail said in response. Both the Occupational Code, Rule 307, and the Code of Ethics, Standard Practice 1.7, which we just talked about, require a listing agent to present all offers to his or her client. Doesn't say that the listing agent has the right to throw out escalation clauses. Don't have the right. You have to. You are obliged to present that offer, even if you don't like them or you don't want them, unless, and she said, goes on to say, there's an exception to the standard of practice, and therefore implicitly in the occupational code that it says, except if the client has waived that obligation. Again, if your seller says, I don't want to see an escalation clause, I won't consider an escalation clause, and puts it in writing to you, and puts it in writing that they will not review or consider an escalation clause, then and only then may you refuse them, may you put it on the MLS that you refuse them, or put it on your showing time notifications that you refuse them. If you don't have that waiver regarding escalation clauses in writing and signed by your seller, then, and you have that on your listing, remove it today. That it cannot be an option on your multiple listing offer. Okay? The presentation made to the MLS can't be on there unless you have it signed by the seller that stipulates that the seller will not consider escalation clauses. So be very careful. I want to go on with this email I got from Gail Anderson. And it says a seller could, for example, tell the listing agent that he didn't want to see any offers below a particular price or any offers with an escalation clause. Some agents and lawyers do not like escalation clauses for a number of reasons. She could argue, for example, that the escalation clause, excluding an escalation clause, may get the seller a higher offer because the five-star client who really wants a home will bid high to make sure he or she gets it instead of simply paying $1,000 over the next best offer. The issue is debatable. However, she would never say that convincing a seller not to accept an escalation clause is never in the best interests. So, if you look at Standard of Practice 1.7, what we just talked about a few minutes ago, the new language this year, your agent, five-star agent, can require a listing agent to give him or her something in writing stating that the seller has waived the obligation to present all offers. And that may include the waiver, the right for the listing agent to not present escalation clauses if that is the stipulation within their listing contract. So, how about them apples? Any questions? Gosh, I hope you have them, because these are two really important things. I don't know who's online here with from Kalamazoo. Anybody down there? If you do, weigh in here, because I'd like to know whether Kalamazoo, the GCAR, it requires that an affidavit be filled out and provided to the buyer's agent. How about Cadillac, Muskegon, Tracy over on the east side? Please weigh in here, because it's going to be important as we move forward that we know what your each of your boards is recommending here. So I'll wait here, and while I'm waiting, I'm going to try to get that language that I created on in an email for you. Oh, that's not what I want. Tim Creech, your Jackson fan club is here. Hey, Tim. How they do that down? Do you know how they how y'all are doing that down in Jackson, Tim? Is there, based on this new Standard of Practice 1.7 and the NAR Code of Ethics, are you required in Jackson as a listing agent to provide an affidavit signed by you and the broker, or would an email suffice? And if you are doing this, do you have something from your seller saying that the seller waives your obligation to present all offers? I'd love to hear from you if you can answer that question for me. That'll teach you to weigh in. Lana. Hi, Lana. I am okay. I haven't seen that out yet. This was good information. Thanks, Tim. Frankly, it came as a surprise to me as well. I was not aware that NAR had voted that in. I was aware that GRAR had that information, but has really been inconsistent in enforcing it. But I think now that NAR has taken a position on it as in adopting this standard of practice 1.7. Now that NAR has taken a position on that, I think that all of the boards are going to be more aware of it, and we may see complaints filed as a result. Amber. Amber, you can ask your question right now because we're just sitting around having fun. I'm going to jump off here for a second and see if I can get I want to read that information, the one that I wrote that's an email. If you are not required to provide a signed affidavit that an offer was presented, we feel as though you are in compliance, if you're not on GRAR, if you're in compliance, if you send an email that says the listing agent affirms that your offer written on such and such a property, the address, dated, a date, A, has been presented to the seller and seller rejected the offer, or B, attached is evidence that the seller has elected to waive presentation of all offers. With the second one, you would have to provide an attachment signed by the seller. Now, what I'm going to try to do here at the end of this session is I'm going to attempt to copy that and put that on the Facebook Connect so that you can save that, copy and paste it, save it to your email so that it's a standard thing that you can send out. And now I'm going to go back and see if I can pull up questions here. Amber says, my buyer is supposed to close on a home this week, but a giant tree fell on it during the ice storm. That's probably not the only one. I saw some. Do we need to wait on the closing until insurance has taken care of the repairs, or is there a way to close with the repairs not completed but still done by the seller's insurance company? That's a really good question. And I think that the first call I would make is to the seller's insurance company to find out, if the claim has been made, whether or not they are going to set money aside for the repair. I wouldn't close, frankly, without knowing that. If they are supposed to close this week, I would make sure that those repairs, the money for those repairs, are set aside somehow, whether it's in an escrow account, something. But if I were a buyer, I would say, yeah, I'm not going to close on that until we know that this is going to be covered, get something in writing from the seller's insurance company stating that they are going to repair the damage, regardless of when the closing date is, that the damage occurred now, and the claim has been made, and they're going to follow through. If I didn't have that language from the insurance company, I wouldn't close it. Anybody disagree? Please join in. Did that answer your question, Amber? Hope so. If not, I'm reading right here. Dom's got me reading. You got another one? You're welcome. Thanks. Okay, got about 4 minutes left here, so send your questions in here, and we'll try to answer them. If you look at this later and you have a question, write the question in the comment section, and I'll address it as soon as I can. As I said, we're gonna try to put that language that I have into the comment section as soon as I have the ability to focus on that just for a second. Any questions on anything at all? Anything you're experiencing out there in the marketplace? That's what I'm here for today. So. Time's running out, so jump in there if you have a question. I have a question? I was jumping in. Good to know how to proceed and... Oh, okay. Yeah, you're welcome, Amber. I hope it works out, that you're able to close and that you're able to get that verification, some documentation from the insurance company that they're going to cover the damage now or in the future. So good luck on that one. You're probably not alone. There are probably other agents who are experiencing that. So thank you for asking the question. No more? Okay. Again, thank you for joining. We're going to sign off now. And again, if you watch this later, oh, wait. Let's see what we got. I'm sorry, that camera. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you again next week. We'll have a current topic for you next week that I think is going to be pretty important for you. So, thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you later.